So our job today is to describe the basic ideas of government and democracy. This way we'll be able to explain the purpose of the United States government and find out what's unique about the United States government. So in order to do that, we've really got to start with a basic vocabulary lesson. We're going to start here with these three words: power, authority, and legitimacy. The definitions are right there. Power means the ability to make somebody do something. The authority is the legal claim to power. Legitimacy is the public acceptance of that power. So if we were all together normally in class right now, what I would do is I'd ask everybody to pick up their pencil. And probably what would happen is all of you would pick up the pencil without even thinking about it. Why would you pick up the pencil? You would pick up the pencil because I have power over you. So I was able to make you do something. If I told you to write something down, you would write it down. That's a clear demonstration of me having power in this situation. The reason I have power, if I were to ask you, why did you do that? Probably the first answer you're going to tell me is, you're the teacher. That's basically what authority means. Authority is like the legal system that gives one person power over another. You've been taught your whole life that the teacher should have power over you, so you do that. The last one is the legitimacy. Like, you do the things that I tell you to do because I'm the teacher. That's the reason you give. If I had a substitute teacher come in today and they told you to do things, chances are you probably wouldn't do exactly everything the substitute said. According to the system, according to the rules, there's no difference between me and the substitute teacher. But that's where legitimacy comes in. You grant me the legitimacy. You have decided that I should have power over you in this situation in a way that you don't grant that to the substitute. So the entire basis of my power really comes from you. It comes from you accepting that I should have that power over you. Second set of words here is just some other ones that we're going to use often. Let's go down to the ones at the bottom first. Policy. Policy is going to mean anything that the government does, any stance that the government takes. Policies change depending on who's in charge and who's making those decisions. You know, policy might be to encourage people to move here from another country. An opposite policy might be to build a wall on the border that discourages people from coming to this country. But those are policies. And then politics, a word we're going to use a lot, really just kind of is the way we decide who gets what. The politics half of the class is going to be about, how we feel about stuff. We're going to talk about, political parties and how they get things done. We'll talk about interest groups and how they get things done, how the media impacts what you think and things like that. But the politics half is, what do you think of issues? We'll spend a lot of time every week looking at what you guys feel about these things. Now, these two terms at the top are just some ones we're going to throw around a lot, and just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So accountability just means that we make our politicians accountable. That means that we punish them when they make us angry. We can most often punish them by voting them out of office. We can reward them when they make us happy. We can reward them by re-electing them to the same office. Transparency is just going to mean whether or not we are able to see what it is that the government is doing. That's a really important part of a democracy. We should know what's going on in our different levels of government. The other basic understanding we need is we need to know what it is that makes up a state. And for today, we're not talking about state like Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas. We're talking about state probably to stand in place of what you would usually just say country for. So the state is a set of institutions that's going to create our system of government. This is like one political entity here, and what we have is we have four components that all states have to have in order to be a state. First of all, population. Got to have people. The state's approach to those people might be to serve those people. It might be to control those people, but you have to have a population there in order for there to be a state. You've got to have, number two, territory. There must be physical space for that state to control or to defend. But you can't have a state without some physical space. Third would be a system of government. And really all we mean is that this entity is able to make policies, and it's able to put those policies into action. So that could be a very complex government with many levels, like the United States, different branches, different state and local governments. It could be, a real simple, just a central government that rules over a very small place. But as long as it has a way to make a rule and make that rule have impact on day-to-day society, then we call that a government. And finally, the state's going to have sovereignty, which means that the state can carry out those policies without other states imposing that on them. So, basically we mean like the ultimate power within a space. So, for example, if we looked at local governments here in the United States, Tennessee is not able to pass a law that says Christianity is the only religion that you're allowed to practice, because we have a national government, the United States of America, that has a set of rules that says otherwise. So they would prevent Tennessee from making a rule like that. And so we would not say that Tennessee really has sovereignty in that area. But you need these four things: population, territory, government, and sovereignty in order to make up a state. And so here's our three levels, and this is our easy way to tell them apart. The state is something that we think of as permanent. We expect the state to last forever. Okay, the United States of America would be an example of a state. I fully expect the United States of America to be here, the day that I die. I expect the United States of America to last hundreds of years into the future. In my mind, the state is permanent. One step down is what we call the regime, which is really just the system of government. And we think of the system as being permanent. In this case, the United States system is a Republican democracy. I expect that the United States will be a democracy my whole entire life. But in some extreme circumstances, the system changes. You have some states go from democracies to authoritarian regimes. Think about Germany around the time of World War II. It went from a democracy to a dictatorship because of extreme situations in that country. We also have the reverse. You might have a dictatorship overthrown by a revolution, and so the people change the state from a dictatorship into a democracy. So the regime is less permanent than the state. The regime can change, although it's pretty rare. Then that third level down is the government. This is the least permanent. We expect the government to change. This is the current group with power. So right now in the United States, that would be President Trump and his administration, or we might even say the Republicans, since they, as a group, they control the White House and part of Congress and have most of the votes on the Supreme Court. So we expect that to change, right? I know that there is an election coming up in November, and I may expect a new group of people to come in and run the government. Government is something that we're going to see change from time to time, and that's change that we expect. So we go from the top. You have state. That's the most permanent thing. The regime is the system of government, and the government is the group that's currently in charge. And then finally, we have some real day one kind of, second grade government stuff here. These are our three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. We need to make sure that we have an understanding of what each one of these does. Legislative means that we're making the law. So here in the United States, that's the Congress, our House and Senate. The executive branch, real basically, we would say they enforce the law. Not every law is about enforcement, but what we say is they carry out the policy. In that example, we might take a law like the Affordable Care Act. That was a law passed by Congress to change the rules about health care in the country. And Congress wrote the law. Congress decided what the law should say. The executive branch, at the time being President Obama and the many offices of the bureaucracy, they had to actually put that into action. And that included everything from, building a website to sell health insurance and to enforcing these limits on insurance companies and things like that. And then finally, we have the courts, whose job is to interpret the law and decide what the law means. And so the courts have to decide what are the limits of the law. What does the law mean? With the Affordable Care Act, they've had several cases where they have to decide, what happens when this law conflicts with people's religious belief and things like that. So real simple: legislative make the law, executive enforce the law, judicial interpret the law. So there we go. Some real basic concepts that we got to make sure that we've got a good understanding of. We'll be able to use these terms when we're talking about the United States government. Probably knew a lot of these already. Just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about these as we move forward.